Somebody watching this right now is looking at a problem and you're calling it a setback when God is actually calling it a setup. Okay? You've been praying for God to remove this thing. But what if the very thing that you could have been asking him to take away is the exact thing that he's going to use to take you somewhere that you couldn't otherwise get to any other way? Okay, what if this problem is actually your solution? I need you to shift how you see what you're facing today and right now. Because if you only see the problem, you're going to feel the pressure that's associated with that problem. But what if you see what the problem is producing? Then you're going to start to feel the purpose behind it. So we're going to go through a few points right now. I want to go to Romans 5, 3-4. Here's what it says. It says, we also glory in tribulations, knowing that the tribulation produces what? Perseverance. And perseverance produces what? Character. And character produces what? Hope. So Paul didn't say glory in tribulation because the tribulation is going to feel good. He said glory in it because of what it produces. There's no perseverance without something to persevere through. There's no tested character without a test. There's no established hope without a season that required it. So your problem is not evidence that God has left or left you. Your problem might be the very evidence that he's working in your life. He's working in your situation. He's working in your marriage. He's working in your finances. So today's broadcast is called Your Problem is Actually Your Opportunity. Your problem is actually your opportunity. And I really pray this becomes a mindset and a behavioral transition in our life. It really can be. So point one, without resistance, there's no growth. Let's go to James 1, 2-4. James 1, 2-4. It says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces what? Patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and what? Complete, lacking nothing. I love how this is all connected. So every personal trainer will tell you the same thing. Muscle doesn't grow in comfort, right? It grows under resistance. You don't get stronger lifting nothing. Okay, you get stronger when the weight pushes back against you and your body is forced to adapt to that weight. So James is telling us the exact same principle operates in the spirit. So testing produces patience, really, not comfort, testing. If you remove every trial, you remove every opportunity for the very growth that you've been asking God for. That is mind-blowing, but yet it's a true concept. Some of you have been praying, God, make me stronger in my faith, and then in the next breath, you're praying, God, remove every hard thing from my situation, from my life. Well, you can't have it both ways. Growth requires resistance. If your life were problem-free or issue-free, you would also be growth-free. So what you're calling a problem might simply be the resistance your faith needed, think about this, okay, to actually develop instead of staying where it's been. It's causing you to grow, my friend. That's why you need to know about this. Point two. God uses stretching seasons to enlarge your capacity. So God uses stretching seasons to enlarge your capacity. Isaiah 54:2. Okay, enlarge the place of your tent and let them stretch out the curtains of your habitations. Do not spare. Okay, lengthen your cords and strengthen your stakes. Lengthen your cords and strengthen your stakes. So notice the language: enlarge, stretch out, lengthen, strengthen. None of these words, in my opinion, describe comfort. They describe pressure applied on purpose. So pressure applied on purpose. A tent doesn't get bigger by staying folded up in the corner. Okay, it gets bigger when somebody takes the stakes and drives them out further than they've ever been before. The problem might be stretching your capacity that's needed before the enlargement of your territory or the enlargement that God promised. And it could actually make this thing fit in your life and situation. So think about it practically. If God gave you the promotion, the relationship, the ministry, the breakthrough, whatever it is, okay, that you're talking about, that you want, that you're praying for, it could actually be the very thing that breaks you. Not because the blessing was too much for God to give, but because your tent wasn't stretched wide enough yet to hold the blessing. Think about this. The stretching doesn't feel like a blessing when you're in the stretching. It feels like tension. It feels like your stakes are being pulled further, than you're comfortable with. But Isaiah isn't describing punishment here. Okay, he's describing what? Preparation. God is not shrinking your life through this problem that you're going through. He's actually enlarging your life. He's enlarging your territory. He's enlarging your life because the space that you're about to occupy is being enlarged. Okay, the blessing is being enlarged. That brings us to point 3. The problem creates the very room that God needs to move in. I'm going to say it again. The problem creates the very room that God needs to move in. 2 Chronicles 20, verse 12. O our God, will you not judge them? For we have no power against this great multitude that's coming against us, nor do we know what to do. But our eyes are upon who? On you, God. So this is Jehoshaphat. He didn't have a strategy, okay? He had 3 armies coming against him at the same time, coming against Judah. And his army was not capable of defeating them. So watch what he said. He said, we have no power. He said, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. Listen, that's not a defeated confession, by the way. Sometimes you just got to say, help. That is the exact posture that opened the door for God to move in his situation. If Jehoshaphat had the power in himself to handle it, there wouldn't have been enough room for God to show up and do what he did. The problem was so far beyond human capability that the only possible explanation for the victory God gave in the very next chapter was God himself. You understand what I'm saying? This is what most believers miss, okay? When your problem is small enough for you to fix, you fix it, and you give yourself the credit. Okay, when your problem is so big, okay, that you have no power against it, you're forced in that moment, in that situation, into the exact posture that Jehoshaphat had, and you have to have your eyes on God. Your impossible situation isn't blocking God's movement. It's creating the only kind of room he actually needs to move in. The room where it's obvious it wasn't you. It was only God. We can only give God the glory. Only he could have got me through this thing. Think about my stabbing, right? Only God. If you know my testimony. Point 4, problems are what teach you to actually pray. Philippians 4, verses 6 through 7 says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by what? By prayer. Everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And then what happens? The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. So no one learns to pray desperately when everything is fine. No one learns to pray desperately when everything's fine. Paul says in everything, meaning the anxious thing, the pressuring thing, the thing that you don't have an answer for. Bring that thing, that specific thing to God in prayer. And that's not a theatrical discussion or instruction like, oh, bring this thing to prayer. No, he's mean like bring it to prayer. That's a prescription. It's written for people in the middle of a problem. Your problem is actually an opportunity. Think about your own prayer life, honestly, okay? Was it in the comfortable seasons that taught you how to travail in prayer? Or was it the seasons where you didn't know what else to do but to pray? You had no other solution. Your problem is functioning as a prayer instructor right now. It is teaching your spirit man a language that ease could never teach it, the language of desperate, specific, believing, faith-filled prayer. And here's the promise attached to it. Not just an answer, but a peace that surpasses understanding, guarding your heart in the middle of the very problem that's still technically unresolved. That kind of peace is not available to people who've never needed it, okay? It's only issued to the people in the middle of something that they had to bring to God because they had nowhere else to bring it. They had no one else to ask. Only God could do it. And that brings us now to point 5. Fasting was never designed for comfortable seasons. Okay, now you can intermittently fast. Obviously, it's good for your body. But Matthew 6:16 through 18 says, moreover, when you fast, do not be like hypocrites, with a sad countenance. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face so that you do not appear to men to be fasting, but to your Father who sees in secret, and your Father who sees in secret, your Father sees in secret will reward you openly. Sorry, I misread that for a second. So Jesus said, when you fast, do not just fast. Like, he assumed his disciples would have seasons that required it, and fasting has always been a response to something. Esther fasted because Haman's decree was a problem that was too big for a plant. The church in Antioch fasted when they needed to know God's specific direction. David fasted when his child was sick and he was pleading with God for mercy. You remember that? So you don't fast when everything's going fine, okay? At least most of the time. You fast when there's something you're fasting for. You're fasting when the problem in front of you requires you to set something down in order to seek God with your whole attention. Your current struggle might be the very reason that you've entered a level of fasting and consecration. I know for me in this last season it was that you never maybe pursued before. You want to go deeper. And that's not punishment. That's the problem producing a discipline in you that comfort never could. So some things only through prayer and fasting, right? So it's like, I'm fasting because I need a breakthrough. I'm fasting because this thing is challenging, but I know God has an answer. Okay, let's go to point 6. Seeking God for specific answers only happens when you actually need one. So Jeremiah 33 verse 3 says, call to me and I'll answer you and show you great and mighty things which you did not know. So this verse is a promise, but it's attached to a call. God doesn't say sit and wait and I'll show you things, okay? He says, call to me, help God, I need you. And people only call out with that kind of clarity, with that kind of fervor, if you will, and urgency when they actually need an answer for something real deep, something real. You're going through a problem, okay? Your problem is forcing a level of specific seeking that vague spirituality never requires. When life is easy, your prayers can stay general. Bless my day, Lord, right? But when you're facing something that has a name, it has a deadline, a diagnosis, a financial number attached to it, a relationship crisis, okay? Your seeking becomes specific, and specific seeking positions you to receive specific answers. Great and mighty things which you did not know. So you would have never gone searching for what God is about to show you if the comfortable version of your life had stayed exactly where it was. The problem cracked something open in your pursuit of God that ease had left sealed shut. Does that make sense? Big revelation. Then we go to point 7. What the enemy means for harm, God repositions for a harvest. What the enemy means for harm, God repositions for a harvest. Let's go to Genesis 50, verse 20. It says, but as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for what? Good, in order to bring it about as it is this day to save many lives. So Joseph said this to the very brothers who sold him into slavery. Okay, he did not deny that what had happened to him was evil. He did not pretend that the pit or the slavery or the prison didn't hurt him. It did hurt him. He said plainly, you meant it for evil. But in the same breath, he identified a second force operating on the same situation, God. He said, God meant it for good. So this is the mastermind key to understanding your problem. There are two intentions that can be operating simultaneously over the exact same circumstance at the exact same time. It's the enemy's intention, which is to destroy you through it, to get you to give up or to be discouraged or whatever. Then there's God's intention, which is to use it to position you to save and serve many people. Joseph's pit became his palace. His prison became his promotion. Nothing about the pain was fake, but nothing about the purpose was canceled either. So whatever pit that you're sitting in right now, Ask the Holy Spirit to show you what Joseph eventually saw. Not a denial of evil, but a revelation of the good God was quietly building underneath it the entire time. All right, let's go to point 8. Your testimony is being written in the middle of this, not after it, in the middle of this. Revelation 12:11. Listen to this. It says, they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death. That is such a powerful scripture. You are not going to get a testimony without something to testify about. Every testimony that you've ever heard that's moved you started with a problem. Okay, a diagnosis, an addiction, a marriage that's on the edge, a financial collapse that happened in somebody's life, a wilderness season. Nobody stands up and gives a powerful testimony about the day that nothing happened. Think about that, right? No one's going to do that. What you're walking through right now is not a delay of your testimony. It is the raw material of your testimony. Somewhere down the road, there's a room full of people or a person who's going to need to hear exactly how you made it through this situation that you're facing today. God's not wasting this. Okay, he's writing your story. He's writing your testimony right now. Your problem is an opportunity in your life. It's an opportunity for growth. Think about that. It's an opportunity to stretch you. It's an opportunity to bring you into a new season. So I want you to change your language this week. I want to, let's stop calling it a problem. Start calling it what it is. Okay. It's resistance that's building your strength. It's stretching that's enlarging your capacity. It's room that's making space for God to move. It's a teacher that's building your prayer life. It's a reason to fast and to seek God for something. Okay. It's raw material for a testimony that you have not given yet. Your problem was never meant to prove that God has forgotten you. It's not what it was. Okay, it might be the very proof, actually, that he's doing something in your life that comfort never could have done. He's stretching you. So I want you to just do this affirmation close with me. This is an affirmation, okay? This is what you need to say to yourself, and I want you to come in agreement with this. I'll not despise this pressure because I know what it's producing in me. My capacity is being stretched so that the blessing that's actually coming to me is going to fit. This problem is creating room for God to move in my life, and I'm watching for him to do it. I'm learning to pray. I'm learning to fast. I'm learning to seek God, and I'm learning something that comfort would have never taught me. What the enemy meant for evil, God is already turning around for good in my life. Do you believe that? Come in agreement with those words. Your problem is actually a solution. God bless you.